The A-Specs are probably one of the most beloved mechanics in the Pokemon TCG. The idea of having a wide variety of one-of power cards is just cool, and picking which specific one best fits your deck is always interesting. Over the past few years, we've seen a wide variety of A-Specs see high-level success, and it's honestly pretty difficult to pinpoint which one's the best, which makes the execution of the A-Specs this time around a lot better than last time. Yeah, last time. Remember these? We got our first taste of A-Specs all the way back during the Black and White era, a time in which GameCube games were affordable and card frames were blue, but only sometimes. Today we'll talk about the first era of A-Specs and why they were, at least in my eyes, kind of a failed mechanic. Before that though, please subscribe, thank you. So the A-Specs in this era work identically to how they do now, in that you can only have one copy of one singular A-Spec card in your entire deck. The A-Specs first made their way over here in the Boundaries Crossed expansion, and the very first A-Spec in the set is Computer Search. Computer Search is a reprint of the classic Computer Search from base set, but as an A-Spec. By discarding 2 cards, you can add any 1 card from your deck to your hand. Here's our first problem. This card is good. Like, really good. You'd think that would be a positive, but this card is so good that it was kind of the only A-Spec worth playing. In the 2015 World Championships, the entire top 8 had this card as their chosen A-Spec. There absolutely were exceptions, but this was really the only A-Spec you'd play. And when evaluating the other A-Specs, the first question you'd have to answer is, why would I want to play this over Computer Search? Take some of the other A-Specs from Boundaries Crossed for example. Crystal Edge is a tool that only works on White Kyurem EX. When attached, your White Kyurem does 50 more damage to the opponent's active Pokemon. So first of all, if you're not playing White Kyurem EX, this card is useless. Go figure. Anyway, you had 2 White Kyurem EX to choose from. They're both fine, though I think the better of the 2 is the one from Boundaries Crossed, which for 2 fire, a water, and a colorless can use Ice Burn to do 150 damage and burn the opponent. With Crystal Edge, this attack now one-hit KOs everything in the format. The energy cost is obviously really rough. However, Embor's Infernal Fandango lets you accelerate as much fire energy as you like from your hand. So, as long as your attachment for turn is on the water energy, it's not too bad. The other White Kyurem EX from Plasma Storm, for the same cost, can use White Inferno to do 100 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on this card. This is way less consistent than the other White Kyurem, but I guess it has the potential to hit for higher damage even without your A-Spec. In any case though, neither of these cards saw any high-level success from what I could find. Crystal Wall is a tool that only works on Black Kyurem EX. This card increases the HP of a Black Kyurem EX in play to 300, which is admittedly kind of monstrous in this format. Once again, we have 2 Black Kyurem EX to work with. The one from Boundaries Crossed is honestly terrible, but the one from Plasma Storm is actually pretty good. For 2 water, a lightning, and a colorless, you swing for a clean 200 damage, but have to discard 3 energy from Kyurem. While White Kyurem had access to Embor, Black Kyurem could use Blastoise. Blastoise's Deluge lets you easily attach tons of water energy, and with cards like Superior Energy Retrieval, it's not too hard to swing for 200 several turns in a row. Hitting for 200 without needing an A-Spec to bump up your damage is actually pretty good, and this card saw real competitive success as a result, with James Good piloting this deck to a 3rd place finish at the 2013 World Championships. Now, you may notice, we're not using Crystal Wall. Sorry, why would we play a tool that's just going to get discarded anyway when we can search any card we want from our deck instead? Some important context here is that Garbotoxin Garbodor was also a major card in this era of the game, shutting off all abilities as long as you had a tool card attached to it. Players were pretty much forced to play Tool Scrapper in their decks if they wanted to actually play the game, so a card like Crystal Wall would probably end up as collateral damage. Crystal Edge wasn't so bad since you at least had 1 attack before Tool Scrapper could get to you, but Crystal Wall could sometimes be discarded before it even did anything, so it just wasn't worth playing for this reason. The final A-Spec from the set is Gold Potion, which heals 90 damage from your active Pokemon. This is at least more generic than the crystals, but still saw basically no play. 90 HP was pretty solid healing for this era, it's just we also had Max Potion. So like, unless all of your attackers have very hefty energy costs, this random item card is probably just better and doesn't even use your A-Spec slot. And even in the cases that Gold Potion is better, do you really value 90 HP over searching literally any card in the game? Be real now. So this first set would give us 4 A-Specs. 2 of which can only be used by extremely specific EX cards. Obviously, Computer Search is going to tower above the rest in terms of viability. For this era of the game, people would pretty much just jam Computer Search in some number of Skylight in their deck and call it a day. We actually saw something similar in the early days of the modern A-Specs. The memory of Computer Search was brought to the forefront of players' minds as Prime Catcher was far and away the best A-Spec of the bunch and could easily be searched out with Arven or Forest Sealstone. Now, as time has gone on, the viability of the A-Specs has shifted, and some of those older A-Specs from Temporal Forces are actually more popular than Prime Catcher is now, simply because the circumstances around them have changed. Could the same thing happen to the Black and White era A-Specs? Well, Plasma Storm would give us 3 more A-Specs. The first of which is Scramble Switch, which may seem familiar. This card switches your active Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon, then lets you move as much energy as you like from the old active to the new one. We have Scramble Switch in our current format where it's a very cool but admittedly situational card, not seeing much use. It's pretty much the same deal here. However, this format has a number of big basics with high energy costs. Being able to move all your energy to a newer healthy attacker can really swing games. Plus, with stuff like Prism Energy and Blend Energy in the format, you could actually switch between completely different types of attackers while still having the correct energy to fulfill their attack costs. That said, even the decks that could benefit from Scramble Switch would still opt for Computer Search much of the time. At the end of the day, this card can swing games if the right conditions are met. And while that is very strong when it works, Computer Search is legitimately just too good to pass up. Of course, these flaws also serve to give Scramble Switch a bit of a surprise factor, making its ability to swing games that much more potent. Overall though, its usage paled in comparison to Computer Search. Here's a deck that makes very good use of Scramble Switch. Johnny Rabus took this Team Plasma deck to a 6th place finish at the 2013 World Championships. All of our energy is special energy, either being colorless or multiple types at once, so it fits perfectly with our Scramble Switch. Plus, Max Potion can heal up the Pokemon that switch out, preventing them from being gusted up for an easy knockout later. This Plasma deck was very popular, and Simon Nerode's 2nd place list does play the Computer Search that you would expect, but this is a pretty good placement too. The second A-Spec is Victory Piece, another hyper-specific A-Spec card. This one removes all energy in the attacks of Victini EX. Sure, I guess. This actually isn't that bad. Again, it's a very specific tool which leaves you vulnerable to Tool Scrapper, but you at least had one turn of a free attack with Victini, and Victini EX had only 110 HP, which was very low for an EX of this era, so you never actually played this card with the expectation that it would stick around. Victini's Intensifying Burn does 100 damage to opposing Pokemon EX, allowing you to 1-hit KO any that are weak to fire, while 2-hit KOing everything else. Of course, this forces us to ask if using your 1 of A-Spec is worth it for something so specific, but if the best deck in the game by far was focused on fire weak EXs, then surely this would be good, right? We'll get back to this. The final A-Spec here was actually very significant. Dowsing Machine makes you discard 2 cards but adds any trainer card from your discard pile to your hand. In the same way Computer Search was a reprint of a card from the early days of the game, this card is a reprint of the classic Item Finder. It's very difficult to recover trainers from the discard pile, and if you think about it, this card is almost just Computer Search for the discard pile, right? So of course this card saw play. If you were playing a fast deck that needed a combo to be set up quickly, Computer Search was the way to go. However, if you were playing a slower deck, having that bit of recovery late game could potentially be more valuable. Suddenly, things changed just a bit. Instead of Computer Search being the only A-Spec worth playing, we now had 2 good A-Specs. Computer Search was still more popular by a lot, to be clear, but Dowsing Machine at least had a proper role. If Computer Search is easily the strongest A-Spec of this era, Dowsing Machine is an obvious pick for 2nd place. This isn't too bad. If we can keep this up, we'll have a fair variety of powerful A-Spec cards by the time we're through. Well, Plasma Freeze gave us 2 more A-Specs, both of which being tools, which is already a bad start because once again Tool Scrapper, but whatever. Rock Guard makes your opponent take 60 damage if they want to attack the Pokemon this card is attached to. This card specifically saw some light success alongside Seismitoad EX. Seismitoad's Quaking Punch locked the opponent out of items, but only did 30 damage. This card became far more terrifying when comboed with Hypnotoxic Laser and Burbank City Gym to do an extra 30 damage between turns, increasing your damage output significantly. Rock Guard would increase your damage output even further, and was especially strong into the mirror match where opposing Seismitoads would lock you out of your Hypnotoxic Lasers. However, who would have thought, it's still outclassed by Computer Search. Still, I would like to shout out the 6 prizes article I found while doing research. It's from before Rock Guard even came out and long before Seismitoad EX was revealed, yet it perfectly predicts that Rock Guard is a very niche choice that could specifically be used alongside Item Lock, which I think is a pretty impressive callout. Life Dew was the other A-Spec in this set, making it so the Pokemon it's attached to gives out one less prize when knocked out. On paper, this is the craziest A-Spec yet. If it goes off, it can totally skew the prize trade in your favor. This effect seems good, but you can still get screwed over by either Tool Scrapper or Xerosic, so it wasn't exactly the safest choice. However, this format had Junk Hunt Sableye, which could add this card back to your hand with its attack. Even decks running Sableye still chose Dowsing Machine or Computer Search most of the time, but Life Dew is a very funny card to loop this with, so of course it saw play. I say this like the card is bad, but it got 4th at the 2013 World Championships. Here's the deck list pouted by Dustin Zimmerman. This deck is clearly a control strategy with Sableye looping your items, Sneasel can retreat lock, and of course we can't forget about Garbotoxin. Darkrai is a very good card that saw tons of play, and of course it's great here too. While this is an extremely impressive placement, Life Dew was still a very niche choice overall. The final 4 A-Specs of this era would come around in Plasma Blast. First, Master Ball is just worse Computer Search. Yes, you don't have to discard, but that doesn't really make this card worth playing when Ultra Ball still has the same effect, and Computer Search is just so much more versatile. Scoop Up Cyclone is a pretty fun one. This card returns any Pokemon on your field back to your hand. This is really good alongside put into play abilities like Crobat or even Shaman, but say it with me now, it was outclassed by Computer Search. It doesn't help that Super Scoop Up was in this format. It's just Scoop Up Cyclone but on a coin flip. Obviously Scoop Up Cyclone is better, but if you have average luck, you can achieve the same effect by just using Super Scoop Up twice. And of course, the use cases for this card were still relatively narrow. The final 2 A-Specs though are where things get interesting. Both of these cards are once again Pokemon specific tools, which seems like it would make them destined for the bulk bin, but these ones aren't so bad. They're both exclusive to Genesect this time around. First of all, G-Scope literally isn't even worth talking about because why would you ever play this card when you could play the other tool, G Booster? This card lets Genesect use the G Booster attack, which for 2 Grass and a Careless does 200 damage and ignores all effects on the opponent's Pokemon. You also discard 2 energy, but that's not too big of a deal. This card literally KO'd every Pokemon from that time instantly, even those that would normally wall you out with Safeguard. This might sound similar to what White Kyurem was doing, but the simple reason why Genesect is so much better is because it has much more support. This card is a pretty big reason why Genesect EX became the best deck in the game. The finals of the 2014 World Championships was literally a Genesect mirror match. Here's the winning list from that event, pouted by Andrew Estrada. It is worth mentioning that Megas were in this format, and these cards did in fact have the HP to tank a G Booster, but there was no way to get around the fact that the Megas would end your turn when they came into play, so any advantage that extra HP would provide was very quickly neutralized. Anyway, going on to this deck list, Genesect can gust up any of your opponent's Pokemon just by attaching a Plasma Energy to it. While Virizion not only makes it so your Pokemon with Grass Energy are immune to the terrifying Hypnotoxic Laser, but it also has an attack that charges up Genesect with another 2 Grass Energy. Tool Scrapper is less of an issue here since the Shadow Triad supporter card adds any Team Plasma card, including G Booster, from your discard pile to your hand. And even if you weren't playing Shadow Triad, you knew for a fact that you had at least one chance to swing for 200 before Tool Scrapper could be used against you. Now would be the time for us to talk about Victory Piece and Victini. Using both of these cards, you could one-hit KO a Genesect or a Virizion for 0 energy. This saw some amount of play, but giving up 2 deck slots and your access to Computer Search just for the chance to swing one matchup wasn't really worth the trouble. The only real downside of G Booster is that it locks you out of Computer Search, so your consistency is just a bit worse than other decks. But you can imagine that having a big kill everything button provides enough power to outweigh any consistency issues. This was a very good card. So why do I consider these old A-Specs a failure? Competitively, they were very strong. Every deck needed an A-Spec, and even back then, people didn't really hate the A-Specs or dislike them at all. At their worst, they're mostly inoffensive cards. But come on, obviously Genesect played G Booster, but besides that, pretty much every deck was using Computer Search. Even the decks that would sometimes choose cards like Dowsing Machine or Scramble Switch would also see players reach similar or greater success with Computer Search. There were only 13 A-Specs total compared to the 29 that we got in Scarlet and Violet. And of those 13, 5 of them were limited to very specific EX Pokemon. That leaves 8 generic A-Specs. With such a small pool, it's not that surprising that one would grossly outclass the rest. More than half of the A-Specs are tools when Tool Scrapper was everywhere. Plus, a lot of these A-Specs had overlapping effects with regular items. Gold Potion is comparable to Max Potion, Master Ball is comparable to Ultra Ball. There's very little incentive to play these cards over Computer Search, Dowsing Machine, or even Scramble Switch, since you could also just play a slightly worse version without using your precious A-Spec slots. The idea of choosing a single one-of power card for your deck is, once again, super cool. That's why this mechanic has existed not just with A-Specs, but with Radiant Pokemon and Pokemon Star. But the thing is, with all of these mechanics, including the modern A-Specs, there was some choice to be had about what you wanted to play. Different decks would prefer different specific cards. And while some would inevitably be better than others, I don't think any of them have ever been nearly as centralized around one specific card in the same way these A-Specs are all centralized around whether they're worth giving a computer search for. I highly doubt Computer Search's overwhelming dominance was intentional, and the way these original A-Specs worked out compared to the other one per deck mechanics is why I consider the original A-Specs to be a failed mechanic. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and comment your favorite old A-Spec and why it's actually Luxury Ball. Bye bye!